Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's Gavin Washington. Welcome to another episode of Real Estate with Gav. As you guys always know, we like to talk real estate, investing, and finances, things of that nature here. And today I got a really special guest with me, Mr. Jon Matuszkiewicz. Did I say that right?
Hey, you said it right.
Dang, I knew I was going to get it. I was practicing. So Jon is a financial advisor, and he made his way up all the way from Charleston, West Virginia, not Charlestown, West Virginia. That's next door. He's a few hours away. But him and I met while I was living down there where my wife is from, and we stay connected, and he's got clients all over the place. So he made his way up here, and I was like, man, I got to get Jon on the podcast because
that's awesome.
Because he's got all the information. So Jon, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
So Gavin, happy to be here. Happy to be part of the session. Again, Jon Matuszkiewicz with Crestview Capitol Investments. I do financial advising, investing. Again, out of Charleston, West Virginia. A little bit about what we do. Started out with New York Life back in the day. Been in the business a little over 10 years. We do everything from working with individuals, working with small business owners, working with high net worth. Started working with foundations recently.
Okay.
And then some with some union halls. But most of what we do is planning. For some individuals is planning, kind of getting a holistic aspect of what they want to do starting up. From a young professional right out of college. For some clients, it's just basically investing in general. They kind of have, they're working with an accountant, working with an attorney. So they just kind of turn to us and say, hey, we have some assets, we want to invest. We either want it to grow a certain way. We want to leave this for some legacy. So every client is a little bit different. So our practice is kind of expanded. I have a small team that work for me. For the last 10 years, I kind of slowly progressed. Worked for New York Life for a number of years, like I mentioned, but went independent recently.
Yeah.
And then going independent, it's been great. As an independent, you're not kind of captive to the aspect of, I can only offer this service, or I can only offer, a particular, product, when you're independent, you have the opportunity to kind of say what's best for the client.
Right.
What is best for you, whether it be a certain investment, a certain platform, whether it be a certain disability, college investing as well. So I do, depending on the client, I do a little bit of everything. But it's all client specific in that aspect.
Gotcha. Good. Talk a little bit about that journey real quick, because I believe when we first met, you were at New York Life still before you made that transition. So how has that transition been for you, and are you happy with it? Is everything going the way you planned?
Every great plan has some road bumps.
Of course.
That aspect.
Yeah, it's never going to be perfect.
It's never going to be perfect, but it's been good though. I mean, no complaints. Not only, most importantly for my clients, it's benefited them the most, to be honest with you. But as myself, it's benefited me. So with New York Life started out, was doing it, started out, I think it's been over 10 years. 2011, I think, when I first started working with them.
Okay.
And then, kind of cut my teeth with them in life insurance and things of that nature, and then kind of expanded into investing and becoming a registered rep, and then becoming an investment advisor. And then, the industry has changed a little bit in terms of, how the insurance companies have kind of went from having a lot of local offices to kind of merging some offices. So unfortunately, when there was some consolidation in our market, and they closed our office, and we kind of had to make some decisions.
Gotcha.
So it kind of forced my hand a little bit.
Okay.
But I was already entertaining it, to be honest with you.
Right.
I was already kind of entertaining it, kind of saying, hey, am I offering the best services and resources to my clients? So it was already kind of in the back of my mind a little bit, but then it kind of forced my hand.
Gotcha.
Kind of played my hand out a little bit. So, about 3 years ago, or a little less than 3 years ago, 2 years ago, transitioned out and opened up my own shingle, my own flag, kind of raised my own flag, and started doing that. And that's how, kind of went through and learned exactly what the platform was all about.
Right.
Kind of learned exactly how, what is out there, because you kind of, you kind of are shown one thing, and you're kind of raised in industry, kind of saying how something works. And then when you look behind the curtain, you kind of see everything. You're kind of like, wow, I can really do this. And this is, I can offer my clients this services and this resource. And that's really kind of when my practice exploded.
Good.
My practice exploded in that aspect. I always kind of tease. People always say, well, did you always want to do this? And I always kind of say, honestly, I've always, wanted to do it since I was a kid, since I was a little kid. I'll keep it short, but when I was in 7th grade, everyone played the game of life.
Right.
Actually, 8th grade, we played the game of life, and I was a stockbroker. I was a stockbroker. My grandmother taught me how to go through and read the business page and read the stocks and the listings and so on and so forth. So, she kind of got me into it years ago, and she always picked her own stuff. She's in her mid 80s, and she's always picked her own stuff, and she kind of got me into it, and I've always wanted to do it. I always wanted to be in the pits in New York City yelling at each other, buy and sell and stuff like that. But I never made it that far, but I'm happy where I landed now.
Well, that's good. They always say when you do what you love, you don't really got to work.
It's not work. Exactly.
Gotcha, man.
Exactly.
So let's dive into some investing options and stuff and things that you offer first. Usually when people first get started into investing, when they first start their career, I think one of the first places they kind of start with is, invest for your retirement, invest for your future. So let's talk a little bit about different retirement accounts. I know one that people usually hear, the first one is kind of a 401k. So talk a little bit about what a 401k is and how that works.
So a 401k is what most individuals will have, especially when they work for a larger employer.
Mm-hmm.
Most individuals go through and they'll have a 401k that's set up. And, so most plans will offer a 401k, and they'll have two different plans. Like, they have a traditional and they have a Roth 401k.
Okay.
And usually it's an opportunity for you to go through and allocate so many dollars based on what you desire. So you can say, 5% of my income will go to savings, or 10%. And people always ask kind of what's the magic number, and that's what everyone's kind of saying. And at the end of the day, you can kind of go through, but it really is based on your individual situation.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go through, and that's where some people get in trouble is they'll say, what's the magic number, whether it be 10% or X amount of dollars. Well, everybody has a separate fingerprint. You know what I mean? Everybody has a separate circumstance in terms of their expenses, in terms of how much, cash flow they have. And that's where they work with, either myself and, or work with their accountant.
Mm-hmm.
But, so basically what it allows you to do, but going back to your question, is a 401k allows you to go through and save for retirement.
Gotcha.
Most plans will go through and they'll go through and offer traditional or Roth, and traditional will allow you whatever dollars you put in is usually a tax deduction on your income taxes.
Okay.
So helps lower your taxable income in that aspect.
Gotcha.
Now, when you go to retire, and every plan document is different, but when, usually when you're in your 60s, as long as you're over 59 and a half, you don't get the early withdrawal penalty. That's when you pay the taxes on that money.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So that you kind of defer the taxes down the road in that aspect. Now in a Roth 401k, it's completely opposite. You don't have any tax benefit that calendar year that you put the money into.
Mm-hmm.
But the great thing about it is when you go to take the money out down the road when you're retired, it's all tax free.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So whether it's doubled, tripled, 10 times of what it's worth,
Right.
it's all tax free. So, and it all kind of depends. Every situation is different. People always say, one or the other. We always look at one on an individual basis.
Gotcha.
In that aspect.
Okay. Another account that I hear about sometimes is the individual retirement account, or the IRA, and I think they have traditional and Roth options of that as well. How's that different from a 401k?
Well, the biggest difference is one is employer sponsored. So an IRA is an individual retirement account.
Mm-hmm.
So most of them are for individuals that don't have a plan available to them.
Gotcha.
So they'll go through, and now the biggest difference is usually the contribution limits.
Okay.
So like a 401k, you can go through and you can, on your deferred salary, you can put up to like $22,000 a year into that plan.
Okay.
So huge limit.
Gotcha.
And an individual IRA, whether it be a Roth or whether it be a traditional, you can only put, like this calendar year in 2023, you can put $6,500 if you're under the age of 50, and if you're over the age of 50, you can put an extra $1,000 at $7,500.
Gotcha.
So that's the big difference, is how much you're going to be able to kind of stock away into your retirement account. It's a big difference. Same thing with the traditional, it has it's a tax benefit the calendar you put the dollars in,
Mm-hmm.
so it lowers your taxable income, but also goes through, and then you pay the tax when you take it out.
Gotcha.
And a Roth, same idea. You don't get any tax benefit now, but you can kind of go through and get it's tax free whenever all the money comes out.
Gotcha.
So it helps with planning in that aspect. Now, again, is one better than the other? You always kind of look at in terms of the individual fingerprint of the individual, see which is best.
Gotcha. Now, when it comes to the caps on the 401k and the IRA, and I don't know if you have the answer to it, but is there a reason why the IRAs are are kind of capped at that? Like, are they better investment options? Like, you can make more money off them, and that's why they're like, you can't put this much money in there.
No, they're really no, because you can both use mutual funds. So I really wouldn't say that there's any more of a benefit in terms of investment vehicles.
Gotcha.
And, there really isn't that aspect. Most of the plans that are employer sponsored, they get real complicated because there's a huge expense because they're considered an ERISA plan. It gets real granular in the details of how they're allowed to go through and offer higher ceiling and contributions. But in terms of investments, in terms of like, as they have any better vehicles inside, not really.
Gotcha.
They still offer your traditional, retirement series, whether it be Vanguard, T. Rowe Price, they do the 20, 2030, 2035. You can do both in those. But the big difference is on a 401k, you're restricted in terms of what they offer you. So you have a table of saying, okay, in your retirement plan or your 401k, you only have these 15 mutual funds you can choose from.
Okay.
Now, if you're doing an IRA, depending on how which platform you use, it can be sky's the limit. You can pick anything you want in an individual IRA, depending which platform you use. So you may have more investment options. But but those investment options that doesn't translate into better options.
Gotcha. So when you're setting up a retirement account, whether it be a 401k or an IRA, you do have some type of options in what you want to invest in.
Yeah. So there is a sheet of you can kind of go through and invest in terms of in your 401k. Like I want to utilize these mutual funds, but again, you're kind of restricted to the list that they give you.
Right.
But when you do an individual IRA, you can kind of go through and say, I want to use a Vanguard, I want to use a T. Rowe Price. It can be, anything you want to be out there. It could be individual stocks if you choose if you use that platform. So it has a lot more, options and stuff like that in that aspect. So
good to know. Now, for people that are business owners or self-employed individuals or 1099 employees, they like to call them sometimes, are there different types of accounts that they can look into?
We can do a whole library wall here in terms of of what's out there.
Yeah.
They got, SEP IRAs and probably, and some are more difficult than others. Some are more encompassing than others. You can do, SEP IRA from easiest to more complicated ones. You do your individual IRAs, you do your SEP IRAs, you can do your simple IRAs if you have employees, you can do solo 401ks, and that kind of gets everything from the more simple programs and then it gets some more complicated.
Gotcha.
So like a SEP IRA, you can kind of go through, and that's going to be an opportunity for you to contribute more. So you can go through and you can contribute 25% of your income to that account.
Wow.
It's what they do is based on percentage. And that ceiling is $65,000 or $66,000 this year.
Okay.
So you put $66,000 in that SEP IRA, but it has to be up to 25% of your income.
Gotcha.
So but say you go through and you're an individual and you have one employee, so it's based on percentage. So if you put say 25% of your income into that plan, you have to put 25% for your employees' income as well.
Gotcha.
So you can't do 10% for your employee and 25% for you. It's equal across the board.
Gotcha.
So you really got to, you really kind of work with your accountant and kind of determine which is the best platform, know, and usually it's a discussion. And, I work with accountants all the time, work with attorneys, mortgage officers, because it's more of a team effort.
Gotcha.
And that's, at the end of the day, it's a team effort.
Yeah, for sure.
In that way. But SEP IRAs are one that are, that are popular for individuals that are 1099s, don't have any employees. In that aspect.
Okay. Now, I heard you mention retirement age a minute ago, and that I believe it's at 59 and a half right now.
Yeah, so 59 and a half. So you can contribute at any point in time, but 59 and a half is kind of the magic age where the IRS kind of says, okay, anything, but if you would take withdrawals out of your account, not loans, but withdrawals out of your, whether it be your 401k, whether it be your IRA, they usually will give you a slap on the hand. They just charge you like an extra 10%, in that aspect. So But anything after 59 and a half, that kind of goes away.
Gotcha.
Because they want to incentivize you to save.
Right.
In that aspect.
Exactly. So if I have my retirement account set up and I know, okay, I can't take these out until after 59 or 60, but I'm looking to invest for something for the future that I might want to take out before retirement age, is there another type of investment avenue I could kind of look into?
Yeah. So we can look into what they call non-qualified.
Okay.
Accounts and like a brokerage account.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So, to kind of, when people say qualified accounts, these are qualified accounts that are like IRAs that qualify for a tax deferral, retirement accounts, so we can, one of the opportunities, one of the more popular ones is a brokerage account. And again, depending on what platform you use and depending on your risk level and depending on your investor profile, you can invest in whatever you want, mutual funds, stocks, bonds, whatever it may be. And it's fully liquid. So you have access to that whenever you choose to. Usually you pay that tax bill on the annual, you'll pay it every year.
Gotcha.
So whether the growth, if you're selling and buying, short-term capital gains, long-term capital gains.
Okay.
But that's, there is, you can liquidate, add, change, there's a lot more flexibility to that account.
Okay.
In that aspect. So that's one that's more popular. That people will look to invest in that, want to be able to utilize those funds.
Gotcha. Now that we're investing a little bit and we have, some money going into our retirement account, maybe we have a brokerage account kind of going in there. Some other things that you might want to do to protect yourself, such as life insurance, you can kind of handle that as well, right?
So our practice, what we kind of try to do is, for some clients is more of the holistic aspect. And we'll kind of cover all the different avenues in terms of, not only the investing, but also the life insurance side,
right?
The disability side, the college savings planning side. So life insurance, is again, is very encompassing, but you have your term life insurance, you have your whole life insurance, and you always get the big question is one better than the other? I always heard, there's all the different philosophies out there, but it's really on the need. At the end of the day, it's really on the need because there is a laundry list of different insurance policies out there and each one has a certain purpose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, so, kind of some of the most common ones are, term life insurance. And that is, and you can designate, for term life to be, 5 years, 10 years, all the way up to 30. And basically, there is kind of the plain vanilla. It's very easy to explain. It's kind of like, you go through and it's usually sometimes the most cost effective, but you'll go through and, would say for 20 years, it only has coverage for those 20 years at a set price.
Right.
And then after those 20 years, you can be enforced, but it's usually so astronomical expensive people drop at that point in time. And then, then some individuals look at whole life policies and that's where it gets, you pay a little bit more for it, but you get return a little bit more. So it builds cash value, has some more living benefits to it, in term life insurance, the only beneficiary the only benefits is for your beneficiaries, unfortunately.
Right.
Not for you. But for whole life policies, it does provide a lot of living benefits and cash value because you can borrow, you can loan from that cash value, while you're living, so on and so forth. So
Gotcha.
It's an extra little piggy bank in a sense.
Okay.
If you utilize it right, it can be an extra little piggy bank for you there because it grows as the policy stays in force.
Gotcha. I'm glad you brought that up because I do hear a lot of debate back and forth as far as, term life versus whole life and things like that. So on one side, some people will say, term life is better because it's cheaper. It covers you for this term. And then you can invest the difference that you would have been paying into a whole life. And then like you mentioned, some people will say, whole life has so many other different investing options that you can use against it and things like that. So I don't know if you would necessarily recommend one over the other, but maybe it's different situational.
And it really is, at the end of the day, it really does come down to the situation. Everybody, some of them actually, some people will go through and I've been approached for needing to purchase some life insurance because they need to cover a loan. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, they're buying a commercial property. They need, the bank wants some life insurance to cover the loan. So there you may, most likely the appropriate is going to be life insurance or term life. You know what I mean? Right. So every life insurance policy or plan has a specific purpose, and sometimes it's best to have more than one. You can have life and whole, and then there's a litany of other ones out there as well, but. I always kind of get nervous when I hear, someone say, well, my other advice is, only do this because, because you can't use one brush to kind of paint the whole ceiling or the whole environment. You're not really kind of looking down and saying, okay, what's best for them in that aspect.
Hey man, true that. Now, are there any other protective investments that we can kind of look into? I heard you mention something like a disability insurance. Touch on that a little bit.
So disability is something that, we kind of look at, it kind of protects your paychecks in a sense. And there's short and long-term disability, which is really good because, if I were to get hurt or, like yourself, how are you going to get your income?
Right.
You know what I mean? So, short-term disability, a lot of times will protect a certain percentage of your income.
Okay.
And, it's usually up for, usually has a life of or a window of providing coverage up to like 24 months.
Okay.
Now your long-term, disability can usually stretch it out a little bit more and kind of go with the age 65, may not start for the first 24 months and then it goes all the way. And that usually will cover, most of them will cover up, 60, a certain percentage of your income in that aspect. So it's always kind of nice to have, in terms of making sure that you have all your avenues kind of covered, in that aspect, because, you want to save for the future, and kind of making sure you're using the best, options out there, saving for retirement, saving for, whatever it may be. You want to make sure your legacy is covered, your family's covered in case something happens to you. Unfortunately, you're going to pass, but then also if you get hurt, there's, I always tell somebody, especially young professionals, as you becoming, start adulting.
Right.
It gets, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, you don't.
You don't know what you don't know. And that's our responsibility is to say, is you don't necessarily need everything right now, but you need to be planning on that aspect, saying, okay, as I start having a family, how am I going to protect that family?
Right.
Whether it be financially and, things of that nature, protect yourself. So disability is something that we always can kind of incorporate into that plan.
Gotcha. Now, one thing that I do kind of want to ask you, just to get a little bit of advice, and when it comes to investing, I hear on one side, some people will say, you should start investing early and often. And then on another side, some people will say, well, you probably shouldn't invest until you're debt free or you kind of cover up, some of the other expenses that you have. What's kind of your take on that?
Everybody can make an argument for every side of the coin in that aspect. My thinking is you got to find a balance. You got to have a balance in terms of, I'm not a believer of saying not investing and only, I'm not an absolute type of guy.
Got you.
You can't just say, I'm not going to invest because I'm going to roll off my debt or I want to go through and invest and hopefully I get more return than I'm going to be on my, my expenses.
Yep.
You got to find time because no one really knows in terms of what the future is going to hold.
True.
In that aspect. So you may be at your prime working income right now. You never know 5 years from now, if you may have the same job or same occupation that pays as much. So I always kind of find you got to find a balance.
Yep.
You got to find a balance. My thinking is you always got to start, saving in some capacity early. You know what I mean? Because it's a multiplier effect. If you were to go through, like I tell everybody, if you were to make, 3% on your money, 3% on your money on, 3%, in terms of actual dollars is a lot more on 300,000 than on 30,000.
Right.
You know what I mean? In that aspect. So by the time you do compounding things of that nature, you want to start saving early.
Yep.
And it's just a balance. You got to look at, you got to work with your accountant. You got to work with, with your advisor, kind of saying, okay, which is best to kind of go through and work with or pay off at the right time. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Now, lastly, one of my favorite investment tools is the College 529 saving plan. Talk a little bit about that and how that works, because I think that's something our community really doesn't know a whole lot about and something that would be great, to invest in our children.
So I'm a big fan. I'm a big proponent for college savings plans because, you can go through. Now, in West Virginia, Hartford is who has the contract and who utilizes the college saving plan. I know DC or Maryland's a little bit different, but every state has a college saving plan and is administered by somebody.
Gotcha.
But basically, the long and short of it is you can go through and save, and Hartford and for West Virginia, Smart 529, and it's a savings plan that helps you save for your child's college savings. So the best part about it is it's you save. You go through, you invest that money. So it is invested in the stock market, so you can't guarantee a certain return in that aspect. So you got to be aware that, it could go up and it could go down.
Right.
That aspect. But Hartford does a great job in terms of kind of allocating those funds, kind of assuming the risk in addition to your additional profile. But the nice part about it is as long as it is used for, college, as long as it's used for college expenses, an approved college expense,
right? Which
could be tuition, books, dorms, things of that nature. Whatever it grows to, it is all tax free.
Nice
in that aspect, and as long as it's used for education. Now, the big myth that it used to be a long time ago was you could only use it in the state that you lived in. Like you can only use it in West Virginia. You can use it anywhere in the country now.
Okay.
So if your daughter or son wants to go to Arizona, Tennessee, wherever, you can use those funds there.
Good to know.
And then also the other myth that's kind of changed a little bit was the fact that say you have one, your oldest child, decides not to go to school or gets an academic full ride or athletic full ride or whatever it may be, you can move those funds and transfer those funds to your second child.
Gotcha.
Or you can transfer it to yourself or whatever it may be. So those funds aren't lost.
Gotcha.
That's the big key. They're not lost. So, with education being that the price it is now, you really need to try to go through and save in some capacity.
Yep.
And it's always helpful to kind of go through. But I'm a big fan because it's always, my kids have room full of toys.
Yep.
I mean, room full of toys. Yeah. So I always say, I tell my my parents or their grandparents, help them with savings for college.
Yep.
That aspect. So anybody can help kind of go through and help contribute to their college savings plan.
Gotcha. A quick question on that too. So like you mentioned, like say they get a scholarship, for instance, other than passing it down to the next child, could you potentially pull that money out and give it to that child and then kind of reinvest it a different way?
So, and again, one thing that we kind of know is the IRS kind of changes that guideline every year.
Of course. Yeah. Something new every year.
But, as of now, you can go through, if they were to go through and get some type of scholarship in some capacity,
right,
based on the dollar value of that scholarship, you can take that money out. Without any penalty, and apply it to however you want to apply it to.
Gotcha.
So whether in terms you can do with that money. So they do give you a window of opportunity. They don't want to punish you if your child is was able to find some funds to pay for school.
Gotcha.
Another way.
Well, that's good to know. Good to know. Well, I think we and I definitely have learned a lot, for you coming through. So definitely thanks and appreciate you for coming through, sharing a little bit of
no problem.
A little bit of knowledge and expertise for the people that are listening or watching, and they're like, I kind of want to get started in investing, or I want to set up my retirement account, or get with you and talk about college savings for my kids. Where can they find you, or how can they reach out to you?
So, just because I live in Charleston, West Virginia, doesn't mean that I'm not accessible.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You gotta love technology in a sense that, you can do Zoom calls, so on and so forth. And then, being in this industry, as the longer I'm in this industry, clients move. You know what I mean? Like I said, we know each other in Charleston.
Exactly.
You're here in Martinsburg. I have clients in Oklahoma and DC and South Carolina. So, I can work with just about anyone. It's always has to be a good mix in that aspect to kind of make sure it's a good pairing. But so my telephone number is 304-343-9533. And then we have a website, Crestview Capital Investments.com. And same thing with my email, jonathan.m@CrestviewCapitalAdvisors.com. So, I'm easy to find, as Coach Dion would say. I ain't too hard to find in that aspect. But no, like I said, so I'll be excited to kind of work with, as individuals kind of, try to find their journey into investing or kind of getting prepared in life. We can kind of cover all avenues.
Good. Well, I can promise you guys, this is definitely a good resource to reach out to. I personally work with Mr. John a lot. He's advised me and helped me grow a lot and helped me set up stuff for my kids and things of that nature. So he's definitely a good guy. And one thing I will say I like about John is that he's an educational person. So like he's not just gonna say like, oh yeah, set up this account, work with me. He will actually kind of walk you through like the best options that work for you, and even kind of educate you through that process. Like I'll never forget one time I had a retirement account with my old job, and like where a lot of financial advisors, like people think like, oh, they're just trying to make money off you and things of that nature. John really advised me to do something that had nothing to benefit with him. So that from that moment, I was like, okay, this is a guy that, you know, I like, that I trust. He always asks about my family and kids of that nature. So John is somebody that really cares. So I definitely appreciate you.
It.
Yeah, man. Thanks again for coming through. And you guys know, as anything real estate, whether you're looking to buy, sell, invest, property management, you can reach out to me at 304-839-7040, or you can find me on social media at Gav the Realtor. That's GAVTHA Realtor. And again, Mr. John, appreciate you for coming through, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Y'all stay up, stay best, please.